never thought signing papers could feel so loud. My hand moved across the page, scratching my name over and over, and each stroke sounded like it echoed through the empty courthouse hallway.
I'm Marcus.
I'm 36 years old, and today I officially became unmarried. The room smelled like cleaning supplies and old carpet. A woman in a gray suit slid papers across the table without looking at me. She'd done this 100 times before. For her, it was Tuesday. For me, it was the end of 8 years. My ex-wife Rachel wasn't there. Her lawyer handled everything, which made sense. We'd stopped talking months ago. Not because we fought. We just ran out of words. When you live with someone who makes you feel like everything you do is wrong, eventually you stop trying to do anything at all. Rachel used to laugh at my jokes. She used to grab my hand when we walked through parking lots. Somewhere along the way, those small things disappeared. They got replaced with long silences and a feeling like I was always being tested. If I brought home dinner, she'd say I picked the wrong place. If I suggested a movie, she'd say she wanted to stay in. If we stayed in, she'd say I never took her anywhere. Couldn't win. The last real conversation we had, she told me she was tired of feeling disappointed. I asked her what would make her happy. She stared at the kitchen counter for a full minute, then said she didn't know anymore. That's when I knew it was over. You can't fix something when neither person remembers what it's supposed to look like. The clerk stapled the papers together and pushed them into a folder. "You're all set," she said, like I just renewed my driver's license. I stood up, picked up the folder, and walked out into the hallway where fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. That was it.
No ceremony.
No music. Just footsteps on tile and the sound of a door closing behind me. Outside, the air felt colder than it should have for April. I stood on the courthouse steps and watched people walk past. Everyone looked like they had somewhere to be. I didn't. For the first time in years, I had nowhere I needed to be and nobody waiting to tell me I was late. I should have felt free. Instead, I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and forgotten to tell me what to put back. I drove across town to my apartment in southeast Portland. The streets were familiar. I passed the coffee shop where Rachel and I used to go on Sunday mornings. I passed the grocery store where we'd argued about which brand of cereal to buy. Everything reminded me of her, but not in a way that hurt. It was more like looking at old photographs of someone you used to know. I parked in front of my building and sat in the car for a few extra minutes. The engine ticked as it cooled down. A couple walked past holding hands, laughing about something I couldn't hear. I wondered if they were happy or just pretending. My apartment was on the 3rd floor. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. It looked exactly like I'd left it that morning. A bowl in the sink. A jacket on the chair. A bookshelf leaning against the wall because I'd lost the screws and never bought new ones. Everything felt stuck, including me. I made a sandwich because I needed to eat something, but I wasn't hungry. I ate it standing at the counter, staring at the wall. My phone buzzed. A text from my buddy Jake asking how it went. I typed back "it's done," and set the phone face down. I didn't want to talk about it. Talking made it more real. I walked from room to room, not looking for anything specific, just moving. The living room had a couch I'd bought from a thrift store. The bedroom had a bed that was too big for one person. The bathroom mirror showed me a face that looked older than I remembered. I splashed water on it and dried off with a towel that smelled like detergent. That evening, I took the trash out just to have something to do. The hallway was quiet except for the sound of a TV playing through someone's door. I walked down the stairs slowly, letting my footsteps echo. On the 2nd floor landing, I stopped. There was a small plant sitting on the windowsill. I'd walked past it 100 times without noticing. It had thick green leaves and looked healthy despite nobody paying attention to it. I wondered who put it there. I didn't know most of my neighbors. I'd lived here for 6 months and could barely remember any of their faces. That's what happens when you're trying to survive your own life. You stop noticing anything outside of it. I threw the trash away in the bin outside and stood there for a minute, looking up at the building. Lights glowed in different windows. People were cooking dinner, watching shows, living their lives. I was just standing in the parking lot holding an empty trash bag. When I got back upstairs, I sat on the couch and stared at the ceiling. The apartment was quiet in a way that felt heavy. Not peaceful. Just empty. I thought about what the clerk said. "You're all set." But I didn't feel set. I felt like I was standing at the edge of something I couldn't see yet. Before bed, I found a notepad in the kitchen drawer. I wrote 4 words with a pen that barely worked. Tomorrow. Fresh start. Believe it. I wasn't sure I believed it, but writing it down felt like making a promise to myself. Maybe that was enough for now. I turned off the lights and lay in bed listening to the building. Pipes knocked in the walls. Someone upstairs walked across their floor. A car door slammed outside. Life kept moving whether I was ready or not. I closed my eyes and waited for sleep, hoping tomorrow would feel different. Hoping I'd figure out how to be just me again, without someone telling me I was doing it wrong. The next day felt strange because nothing was pulling me in any direction. I woke up when I wanted to. I made coffee without anyone commenting on how much I used. I stood by the window watching rain leave dark spots on the sidewalk, and for the first time in months, I wasn't dreading anything. But I also wasn't excited about anything. I was just there, existing between what ended and whatever came next. Around noon, I needed to check my mailbox. I grabbed my keys and headed downstairs. The hallway smelled like someone was cooking garlic bread. My stomach reminded me I'd skipped breakfast. At the mailboxes, I fumbled with my key, trying to open the small metal door that always stuck. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. "Need help with that?" I turned around. It was my neighbor from apartment 3C. I'd seen her before, passing in the hallway or getting into her car in the parking lot, but we'd never actually talked. She had dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail and was wearing a faded college sweatshirt with paint stains on one sleeve. She was holding 2 grocery bags that looked heavy. "I'm good," I said, finally getting the mailbox open. "Just this lock likes to fight me." She set her bags down and smiled. "Most things in this building like to fight. The washing machine took my quarters last week and gave me nothing." I laughed a little, felt weird, laughing, like my face had forgotten how. She looked at me for a second longer than normal, like she was deciding something. Then she said, "I heard about your divorce." "I'm sorry. That must be really hard." I froze. I didn't know how she knew. Maybe someone in the building told her. Maybe she'd seen Rachel leave with boxes weeks ago. Either way, it caught me off guard. "Yeah," I said. "It's been a lot, but it's over now, so." She nodded slowly. Then she took a small breath, like she was about to jump off something. "I've been waiting to say this," she said. "I think you're someone worth knowing better. And now maybe that's actually possible." Time did something weird. It slowed down and sped up at the same time. I just stared at her, trying to understand what she meant. "Wait, what?" I said. She didn't look away. "I've noticed you for a while. You seemed like you were carrying something really heavy. I wanted to say something before, but you were married, so I didn't. But now you're not, and I figured maybe I should just be honest." I didn't know what to say. My brain couldn't keep up. "You noticed me?" "Yeah," she said, picking up her grocery bags again. "Look, I'm not trying to make this weird. I just thought you should know someone sees you. And if you ever want company without any pressure or expectations, I'm in 3C. I usually make too much tea anyway." Then she walked toward the stairs, leaving me standing there holding junk mail and feeling like something just shifted under my feet. I went back to my apartment and sat on the couch for 20 minutes, replaying what she said. Nobody had said anything like that to me in years. Rachel used to compliment me at the beginning, but it stopped. Everything stopped. And now this woman I barely knew just walked up and said I was worth knowing. I didn't understand it, but I also couldn't stop thinking about it. Around 5 that evening, I did something I normally wouldn't do. I knocked on apartment 3C. She opened the door wearing the same sweatshirt but had changed into jeans. Behind her, I could see plants everywhere. On shelves, hanging from hooks, sitting on the windowsill. Her apartment looked alive. "Hey," she said, sounding surprised but not unhappy. "Hi," I said. "You mentioned tea." She smiled wide. "I did." "Come in." Her place was smaller than mine but felt bigger somehow. There were photographs on the walls of mountains and beaches and cities I didn't recognize. A cat was sleeping on the back of the couch. Books were stacked on a table next to a candle that smelled like vanilla. She poured tea into 2 mismatched mugs and handed me one. We sat on her couch and she didn't ask me about the divorce. She didn't ask me anything heavy. She just talked. She told me she was a teacher at an elementary school across town. She said her favorite part was when kids figured out how to read on their own and their faces lit up. She told me she moved to Portland 3 years ago because she needed a fresh start after a bad breakup. It's funny, she said. You think leaving a place will fix what's broken. But really, you just take yourself with you wherever you go. You have to fix what's inside. I told her about my job at the manufacturing plant, how I managed operations and spent most of my day putting out fires that other people started. I told her I used to play guitar when I was younger but stopped because life got busy. She asked why I stopped. I didn't have a good answer. Sometimes we let go of things that made us happy because we forget we're allowed to be happy, she said. That hit me harder than it should have. We talked until the room got dark and she had to turn on a lamp. The cat woke up, stretched, and jumped onto my lap. That's Pepper, she said. She doesn't like most people. You should feel honored. I scratched behind Pepper's ears and felt something unwind in my chest. Something that had been tight for so long I forgot it was there. When I finally stood to leave, she walked me to the door. Thanks for the tea, I said. And for, saying what you said earlier. I meant it, she said. You seem like someone who hasn't heard anything good about himself in a while. That's not fair. So I figured I'd start. I walked back upstairs feeling lighter than I had in months. That night, I lay in bed and heard faint piano music coming from somewhere below me. It was soft and a little sad, but beautiful. I wondered if it was her. I fell asleep easier than I had in years, and for the first time since everything fell apart, I didn't dream about arguments or empty rooms. I dreamed about nothing at all, which felt like peace. 2 weeks passed, and Sophia became part of my routine without me noticing how it happened. She'd knock on my door some mornings with a thermos of soup, saying she made extra. Other days, I'd find a note slipped under my door that said things like, "Don't forget to eat lunch," or, "The park down the street has good walking trails." She wasn't pushy. She just showed up in small ways that reminded me someone cared whether I was okay or not. One Thursday after work, I was walking up the stairs when I saw her struggling with a massive box. It looked like it weighed more than she did. "What's in there?" I asked. "A new bookshelf," she said, breathing hard. I thought I could carry it myself. I was wrong. I grabbed one end and we hauled it up to her apartment together. Once inside, we spent the next hour putting it together. The instructions were in 3 languages, none of which made sense. We laughed every time we put a piece on backward or couldn't find the right screw. Pepper the cat kept attacking the screwdriver like it was her enemy. By the time we finished, the shelf looked crooked, but it stood up. "Good enough," Sophia said, stepping back. "It's got character." We ordered pizza because neither of us wanted to cook. She put on an old comedy show, and we sat on the floor eating straight from the box. Her apartment felt warm in a way mine didn't. It wasn't just the temperature. It was the feeling that someone actually lived there, that the space meant something. At some point, she fell asleep against my shoulder. I didn't move. I just sat there listening to her breathe and watching the TV flicker. Felt normal. Easy. Like something I didn't have to work for. The following weekend, she asked if I wanted to go to the farmer's market with her. I hadn't been to one in years. Rachel used to say they were overpriced and crowded. But Sophia walked through the stalls like she was exploring treasure. She'd stop at every booth, talking to the vendors about their tomatoes or their honey or their handmade candles. She bought fresh flowers and handed me half of them. "For your apartment," she said. "Plants make places feel alive." I put them in a cup on my counter when I got home. She was right. They did make it feel different. One night, we sat on her balcony wrapped in blankets because the air had turned cold. The city looked small from up there, just scattered lights and distant sounds. She told me she used to be engaged. His name was Daniel. They'd planned a wedding, picked a venue, sent invitations. Then 2 months before the date, He told her he wasn't sure he loved her the way he should. It destroyed me at first, she said. But looking back, he did me a favor. I would have spent my whole life wondering if I was enough. Now I know the problem wasn't me. I told her about how Rachel used to criticize everything I did. How it started small, with little comments, and grew into something that made me feel like I couldn't do anything right. You can lose yourself trying to make someone else happy, I said. Especially when they don't even know what happy looks like. Sophia nodded. That's the worst kind of trap. You think if you just try harder, it'll get better. But some people don't want better. They just want someone to blame. We sat in silence after that, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet where you didn't need to fill the space with words. Then one Saturday evening, everything shifted. We were sitting on her couch watching a cooking show when my phone buzzed. I glanced at it and felt my stomach drop. It was Rachel. The message said, "Can we talk? I have things I never got to say." I stared at the screen. Sophia noticed. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah, I lied. Just work stuff. I don't know why I lied. Maybe because I didn't want to ruin the moment. Maybe because I thought it didn't matter. Rachel was part of the past and this was the present. They didn't need to touch. But the text stayed in my head. That night, after I left Sophia's apartment, I read it again. Part of me wanted to delete it and pretend I never saw it. But another part, the part that still felt guilty for not saving the marriage, thought maybe I owed her this. The next afternoon, I texted back and agreed to meet. I told myself it was just closure, just tying up loose ends. I didn't mention it to Sophia. It didn't seem important. We met at a cafe we used to go to, the one with the chip tables and the owner who remembered everyone's order. Rachel was already there when I arrived. She looked the same, hair pulled back, wearing the gray coat I'd bought her 2 birthdays ago. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks for coming," she said. "I wasn't sure you would." We ordered coffee and sat across from each other like strangers. She talked for 30 minutes about regrets. About how she wished she'd communicated better. About how she didn't realize what she had until it was gone. Every sentence sounded like she'd practiced it. I listened without saying much. Halfway through, I realized something. I wasn't there because I wanted closure. I was there because I still felt like I owed her something, like her unhappiness was my responsibility. But it wasn't. It never was. When she finally stopped talking, she looked at me like she expected me to say something that would fix everything. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said. "But it's not me anymore." Her face fell. I stood up, left money on the table, and walked out. The air outside felt sharp and cold. I sat in my car for a few minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to figure out what I was feeling. Relief, maybe, or just exhaustion. When I got back to my building, Sophia was sitting on the front steps. She wasn't looking at her phone. She was just sitting there, staring at the street. My heart sank. "Hey," I said carefully. She looked up. Her face was calm, but her eyes weren't. "I know you saw her." I froze. "How?" "Mrs. Alvarez from the 2nd floor saw you at the cafe," she said. "She mentioned it when I ran into her at the grocery store." I felt my chest tighten. "Sophia, it wasn't." She held up a hand. "I'm not mad that you saw her. I'm hurt that you didn't tell me. We've been spending all this time together. And you couldn't just say, 'Hey, my ex wants to talk?' You had to hide it." "I didn't think it mattered," I said. "It does," she said, standing up. "Because if you're still hiding things from me, then you're not really here. You're still halfway in your old life, and I can't be with someone who isn't all the way in this one." She walked past me into the building. I stood there on the steps as the sky turned dark, realizing I'd just broken the first real thing I'd found in years. 5 days went by, and Sophia didn't knock on my door. I didn't hear her piano music at night. I saw her twice from a distance, getting into her car or carrying groceries, but she didn't look my way. Felt like the building had gone silent. Couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the look on her face when she walked past me on the steps. I'd hurt her not because I saw Rachel, but because I didn't trust her enough to be honest. On the 3rd night, I sat down and wrote her a letter. Not a text. A real letter on paper. I told her meeting Rachel wasn't about wanting her back. It was about me still feeling guilty for failing at something I'd put 8 years into. I told her I didn't mention it because I didn't want to seem weak or confused. But hiding it was worse. I slid the letter under her door around midnight and went back upstairs. I didn't expect a reply. The next 2 days were harder. I started running in the mornings because I needed to move, needed to do something other than sit in my apartment replaying every mistake. I'd run until my lungs burned and my legs felt like they'd give out. Then I'd walk back slowly, hoping maybe I'd see her. I never did. On the 6th day, I came home from work and found a small envelope taped to my door. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a note in Sophia's handwriting. It said, "I've been waiting to say this. If you're finished trying to manage everyone's feelings except your own, I'll be home tonight." I read it 3 times to make sure it was real. That evening, I stood outside her door for a full minute before I knocked. When she opened it, she looked tired. Not angry, just worn out. "Hi," I said. "Hi," she said back. She stepped aside and let me in. We sat on her couch, the same one where we'd watched TV and eaten pizza and talked about nothing important. But now everything felt heavy. "I'm sorry," I said. "I should have told you. I was just scared." "Scared of what?" she asked. "That you'd think I wasn't over her. That you'd see me as someone who couldn't let go. I didn't want you to doubt me." Sophia looked down at her hands. "Marcus, I don't need you to be perfect. I don't need you to have everything figured out. I just need you to let me in. Even when it's messy. Especially when it's messy." I nodded. "I know that now. And I'm sorry it took me this long to understand." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Did seeing her help? Did you get what you needed?" "Yeah," I said. I realized I was holding on to guilt that wasn't even mine. She made choices. I made choices. We both let it fall apart. But I kept thinking if I could just understand it better, maybe I wouldn't feel like I failed. But sitting there with her, I realized I didn't fail. It just didn't work. And that's okay. Sophia's expression softened. "That's all I wanted to know. That you're really here. Not stuck in the past." "I'm here," I said. "I promise." She reached across and took my hand. It was warm and steady, and I held on to it like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. We didn't fix everything that night, but we started over in a way that felt honest. Over the next few weeks, we spent more time together, but it was different now. There was no pretending. If I had a bad day, I told her. If she needed space, she said so. We learned how to be real with each other, not perfect. One Saturday, I brought my old guitar to her apartment. I hadn't played in years, but she asked me to try. My fingers were clumsy on the strings, but she didn't care. She sat on the floor with Pepper in her lap, smiling while I played a song I barely remembered. "You're rusty," she said, "but it's nice. You should keep playing." So I did. A few weeks later, we combined our apartments without planning it. My coffee maker ended up in her kitchen. Her plants filled my empty shelves. We didn't make a big announcement. It just happened naturally, like breathing. One night, while we were washing dishes together, she looked at me and said, "You seem lighter now." "That's because I finally figured out what peace looks like," I said. "And what's that?" she asked. "It's someone who doesn't try to fix you. Someone who just lets you breathe." She smiled and handed me a dish to dry. We stood there in comfortable silence, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. Months later, when people asked how I moved on so fast after my divorce, I told them the truth. I didn't move fast. I just stopped staying stuck. The person who saw me for who I really was wasn't far away. She was one floor below me the whole time, waiting for me to be honest enough with myself to notice. Now when I look back, I don't think about the courthouse or the arguments or the nights I spent wondering what I did wrong. I think about Sophia's words that day at the mailboxes. "I've been waiting to say this." She wasn't just talking about liking me. She was talking about something bigger, about taking a risk, about being brave enough to say what you feel even when you don't know how it'll turn out. And I'm glad she did. Because sometimes the best things in life happen when someone is brave enough to be honest. And you're finally ready to listen.